Hello and welcome everyone to this Santex webinar. My name is Dave Smith. I'm the Director of Client Services at Santex. I will be moderating this discussion today. We will be talking about how to use an agile approach in your software project in order to essentially make it pay for itself, or as close to that as possible. We appreciate you joining us. As we know, the majority of us are working remotely, in most cases from home. So if something comes up that requires your attention, we understand. Stay as long as you're able to. And if you do need to leave early, we will be sharing this webinar through YouTube in the next few days. This session will be recorded. We've got a very helpful topic today and two speakers who I consider to be great colleagues and friends. We have Nico Bravo, who is an experienced Scrum Master and business analyst. He's been working with Santex for several years. And we have Adam Israel, a close partner of ours. He works as the Global Delivery Manager for Fulcrum Consulting. If you have any questions as we move along, please don't hesitate to use the chat feature or click the raise your hand button. We would like this to be agile in every sense of the word, so we welcome an interactive conversation. I'd like to start with a quick poll here. Just a question. You should see a poll pop up on your screen. I'd like to know if you have heard of self-funding before as it relates to agile methodologies. You should see the poll up now. Just take a moment to answer if you could. That would be great. Okay, we see the results there. So half of you have and half haven't. So, well, that's great. So some of you will learn some new things today, and those of you might have some input that you can even add. Feel free to jump in. As I mentioned, if there's something that you would like to add to the conversation, that would definitely be welcomed. So, okay, I think we're ready to get started. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the conversation along. Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Dave. Thank you very much for hosting. So we're excited to have each and every one of you here. If you do have anything to interject, please do. We want it to be collaborative as possible. At the end, we also save some time for a little Q&A. So today's agenda looks a little bit like this. I'll be covering some of these points, and my partner in crime, Mr. Nico Bravo, will be covering the rest of them. So Agile, I know many of you have heard of this. Most of you have dealt with it in some facet. Some of you have even implemented it into your organizations, whether it be simple as Scrum and sprints or Kanban or extreme programming or any flavor of it. But I would like to take a poll just so we know what we're dealing with here today from the audience. And do you currently use agile methodologies in your organization? So a poll question will come up and we will get a better idea of who currently uses agile today. Whew. Okay, so don't need to go into a lot of explaining here. What we're going to talk about today really is our version of Agile, which we call it simplifying Agile, really sticking to the basics of collaboration, delivery, reflection on what we've delivered, and improvement on delivering it. So by simplifying Agile, we believe that we can deliver fast, fail fast, and really get to what we're talking about today, which is something that can be monetized and made to be a self-funding project. So my examples, we did this as a real life exhibition, if you will, with a client of ours. And so the client is an awards recognition and incentives platform provider. That organization works directly with brands that you would well known as Hyundai and Toyota and Chrysler. They work with companies like Pfizer and big pharma and many different organizations that thrive off sales of goods. Okay, well, one thing about their software platforms that they noticed would be a huge incentive internally and bring a ton of revenue to them would be if they could have a platform to book trips, just like an Expedia, if you will, to book vacations for their users internally through them. Then they would receive all the kickbacks from the airlines and the hotels and the rental cars. They had actually equated it based off their user base to $1 million annually. So they saw an immediate need to implement this just for that. What they also knew is that it would give them a competitive advantage against other people in their space. And most importantly, it'd be an easy sell or be able to monetize it very quickly as an add-on to their software by selling it to their clients, Hyundai and Pfizer and these people. Because how many of you would book a first-class ticket to go on your end of the year sales competition if there was no restrictions put on which ticket you could book? How many of you would book the most expensive ticket on the flight, right? And with the best leg room and everything else, even if first class was full? Well, we built it with rules engines to allow only a certain spending cap, or they had to get authorization from their organization to spend higher than that. So it was a win-win from all points of view and allowed us to make it a self-funding project pretty easily. So feedback. Now, I know a lot of you are big components or proponents of feedback, as we are, and we'll be today as well. We will love to hear your feedback today, but we deliver early and often to get feedback. It is very important for us that we get working software over documentation. What that means is it's not that we're throwing documentation out the window. We're still going to document the correct final product or the correct final features, if you will, but we're not going to waste time documenting something if we go down a path this way and we get feedback from the users and feedback from the client, and the client says, nope, we need to go this way. Well, that's the benefit of being agile. We can do that, but we're not going to waste time doing complex documentation until we've gotten the exact features and functionality that we're looking for. So we're looking to fail fast. We're looking to get on the tracks and get the train rolling really quickly, and we want to fail so that we can learn and improve and go in the right direction.
Thank you, Adam. And also, we want to deliver fast. We want to maximize profit. So we will be delivering value as soon as possible, and will help us to maximize our return of investment and reach sooner the break-even point of the self-funding and the self-funding status. Sorry. So on this graphic, we can see on the vertical axis the cash flow, and on the horizontal axis the ROI, the time. Sorry. The curve in red represents the cash flow over time, and this part here is the initial investment of the project. The cash flow is negative until the project reaches the self-funding status point, and this occurred when we are able to turn our negative cash flow into a positive one. This is, we start selling value. The second part of the curve is when we reach the break-even point and our initial investment equals or matches our revenue. And from that point on, we have a good return on investment like this, beautiful one, but we can have also a one that it goes to the right like this, or it just goes smoothly over the time, right? We have a positive return of investment. So in the early 2000s, Jane Cleland and Mark Dean wrote a good book called Software by Numbers, describing the incremental funding methodology. Yay, another methodology. Now, not today. So as is defined by the authors, it was a return of investment driven approach. In practice, it was very challenging how to calculate those return of investment and keep track of good metrics. Nevertheless, its main concept, the minimum marketable feature, or MMF, it is key to our discussion, since it's defined as the smallest increment delivered that might increase the overall return of investment. So it was very hard to calculate, but no worries, because on most of known agile approaches that Adam mentioned at the beginning, and the ones that we know, we have what we call the production releases. These are pieces of working software that deliver to the end users, give value and revenue, right? So if we are able to match these production releases with the minimum marketable feature concept, we will be on the right track, all right? So in this second graphic, we want to show you on the vertical axis, the product knowledge gained by the development team as soon as we deliver the first production release, right? On the Adam's online booking example, it could be the flight reservation part, for instance. So as we deliver the production release 1, which is actually our MMF1, we earn a lot of knowledge, we earn money, and we reach the self-funding point. We'll continue like that, knowing and learning from the feedback and reaching the break-even point after the production release 2, that, for instance, it could be the car rental part or hotel reservation as second complete feature that will give us revenue, right? So we move there to our delivered product. We actually call it like that. It's minimum viable product, and it's not the same as MMF. If we succeed in order to identify a collection of minimum marketable features, as we did on the graphic, that will become our product, and we will be able to reach as soon as possible the self-funding point. More on that, we'll be able to reduce the investment, because as soon as we reach the self-funding point, we invest less money, right? So that's it, self-funding. Goodbye, Adam. Well, not so fast. Unfortunately, this does not work out of the box. We need our business stakeholders to be engaged from the very beginning. They are the ones that will help us to understand which are the right MMFs that we need to deliver as fast as possible. And also, we need to commit our sales stakeholders, because they are the ones that will be selling and therefore giving revenue.
So in the example, Nico, that we talked about earlier with online booking, yes, it was very important to be able to have the sales staff, if you will, or the sales people involved in the process, so that they would be behind the online booking tool for at least flights, so that we could get it and monetize it from both ends immediately. We also had to have them buy into the entire MVP, if you will, so that they understood the product that they would be selling for next year's release of their software to their end clients, right? To be able to monetize that completely. They were committed to the sales process, as well as the business stakeholders saw the value of the kickbacks and what could be gotten internally by this software. So we had commitment from both sides of the fence, but without it, it would be much more challenging. You're right.
Thank you.
Hey, Nico, we have a question from one of the attendees, from Eric. Thanks for the question, Eric. He asks, where did the term MMF come from? Do you have any background on that, or are you?
Yeah, it is from Software by Numbers. That book is wrote in 2003 by Jack Levin, and yeah, it works.
Great. Okay.
They actually create an incremental funding methodology, and they describe very thoroughly the minimum marketable feature.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks for the question, Eric. Thank you, Nico.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right. So in order to succeed on this endeavor, we need to apply an agile approach, always keeping in mind to be as simple but as effective as possible. we need to ensure that both business and sales stakeholders are engaged and committed, collaborate with them in order to deliver as fast as possible those minimum marketable features, then reflect, improve in each cycle, having in mind to maximize our return of investment. Based on what you learned today, is there a desire to implement self-funding projects in the future in your organization? You will see a poll appearing, so you can answer there. Dun, dun, dun. We need to put some music now for the poll questions. Nice.
Yeah, maybe no. Equal split there. Okay.
I would be curious for the attendee or attendees who answered no, why? Perhaps something we can cover later or answer in the chat if you might.
Sure.
So, Eric, thank you for your earlier question. What other questions came up in your mind or potential challenges did you see with this that we could have an open topic for anybody that was on the presentation today?
Feel free, if anybody has any questions, you can post them here. I do have a question for you, Nico. It seemed that most of the attendees have experience with agile methodologies and some experience with self-funding as it applies to agile methodologies. Would this approach be able to be implemented to a project that is already midstream, or does this need to be started from the very beginning of an effort? What's your experience with that?
Well, I think that the short answer is yes, it could be applied, but it will be important to, again, emphasize on how are we applying the Agile approach? How are we identifying these minimum marketable features? How are we calculating the return of investment and other metrics that give us information, and defining the next cycle and the next product, let's say, but first the features that will give us that revenue to reach the self-funding point of the development, right? So yeah, it could be applied to a midstream project. But again, it needs to be taken as serious as if you start from scratch like that.
Yeah, to add to that too, it's the willingness of the business and the sales stakeholders to be able to pause, reflect, and then start fresh with the new team or the new idea that we're moving forward with, right? So it's easier, I believe, to start fresh. However, it can be done midstream for sure.
Sure. Well, thank you both for the input on that. Since you mentioned, Adam, the willingness of an organization or the people involved in the project, have you personally experienced any type of opposition for somebody who's in the organization who doesn't want a new approach like this to be introduced?
Well, there's always opposition to change, David. I think the biggest thing that we have to do in any kind of agile transformation or any new methodology that we're implementing or introducing is to explain the psychology behind it and the real benefit to the individual, to the person who's showing that opposition to change. They have to see it from their seat, from their shoes. How is this going to make their life easier, more efficient, better, get better results, whatever the case may be? If they can get that and gain a little bit of ownership and buy-in into what we're talking about, that generally makes that transition a lot easier.
Sure. Okay, makes sense. And of course, again, for any of the attendees, if something pops up you'd like to ask, feel free. I do have another question for you, Nico. I'm familiar with the Agile methodology, the practice of retrospectives. How would you describe that as being essential or important to this process?
Well, I think that we cannot improve if we do not have that time that Adam mentioned to reflect, right? So we need to start understanding what is, because sometimes we know that something is wrong, but we do not take the time to understand why this is happening and how we can improve it. So retrospective are, I would say, very critical, and even more than the planning meeting, let's say, because if we can identify those things by via retrospective or taking the time to reflect, we'll make it. We'll make it. Sometimes people or no organizations are reluctant to use the retrospective. Sometimes because they are not applied correctly in a sense that sometimes we meet, we talk about, we know the pain points, but we do not take corrective actions, right? And then there's a lot of frustration because, yeah, we know our pain points, but it's important to reflect, but then improve the both things.
To add on to that one little bit is we see the most amount of turnover, which is a huge headache for organizations today on both projects and in their staff. We see a ton of turnover because clear, open, and honest and transparent retrospectives are not happening. And what I mean by that is nobody wants to continue down a path of chaos. Nobody wants to continue making the same mistakes. We as human beings, and especially in the engineering field, we want to figure out what we're doing wrong so we do not do it wrong again and cause ourselves rework or more chaos in our minds, if you will. So it's huge. I've seen organizations lose 30-40% of their staff year over year and they can't figure it out. And that's the first thing I go to is show me how you guys do a retrospective and who speaks up during it, right?
Agreed. Yeah, the time to slow down and do a little internal analysis can save you a lot of time later. It's extremely important. So with the idea that this will be broadcast later on YouTube, we can assume that some others might see it who don't have experience with Agile methodologies. Nico, for somebody who has not used this before and would like to apply Agile methodologies, where would you suggest they start to learn? What would be the best approach?
Well, I would say that since there are many methodologies and possibilities, I think that the best way to do it is with someone that already knows in order to do it together and go through the path together, because sometimes it's easier to try to do some recipe or something like that and then get frustrated and then it's worse, right? Because people understand that it didn't work and that's it. So I think that by doing with agile coaches or people that work on that, that's the right path to start.
Sure. So bring in an experienced partner. That's the key. Okay.
And agree to an area that you feel that you can have the most impact, right? So if you had a partner like us, for example, and we were doing an agile transformation or an agile introduction, if you will, then we would say, let's start small. Definitely. Let's show results in this one area. If this is your pain point, if this is something that needs to become more efficient or deliver more regularly for you, let's start here. And maybe that's an agile coach and maybe a strong scrum master, maybe a flavor of both. might also be a tech lead to help on the technical side and implementation of it as well. It just depends. We have to really do an analysis of what the situation is, and each organization is so different.
Sure. And do you think it's important, Adam, as an analysis of how this can be applied is being processed? Would monetization of features be something that you're looking at first? Is that the key?
No, we want to have the same goals of how do we define success. So maybe for the organization, it is not monetization as success. It is delivery or consistent delivery of features on timelines or whatever the case may be for them. Each organization has a different way of defining success. So we do what we call a kickoff, an any engagement. And during that kickoff, we're going to outline some things, but the key criteria there is how do we both define success? How do we measure each other as a partner? And how do we define what that goal is and what steps we're going to take it? And as long as we hit that goal, is that success, right? Or, how much communication are we going to have to know if we're not meeting your expectations or you're not meeting our expectations, which is a difficult conversation to have, but it's needed in many ways on what we thought this partnership should be and where our goals are.
Sure. Well,
but monetization may be one of those things, Dave. It may be, but not always.
But yeah, not always focusing directly on the bottom line, but maybe value added. Okay, makes perfect sense. Thank you for that. So I don't see any additional questions from the attendees. I have one additional poll I'd like to ask, just kind of really simple question here with a simple yes or no. How many of you found this topic valuable? And if anybody would like to have a brief one-on-one follow-up conversation, we can arrange that as well. So how many of you found this topic to be valuable with a simple yes or no? Okay, so mostly yes. That's good. I feel like if it was all yes, we wouldn't have total truth and transparency here. So okay. Is there anything else, Nico or Adam, that you'd like to cover? I think we've reached the end of the topic here.
Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking their time out of their day to hear about what we've been experiencing and some interactions with our clients and our partnerships out there. And hopefully we taught you a thing or two. And if you've already known this and you wanted to add to it, we'd be open to future conversations on either side of the coin. So if there's anything we can do to talk with you guys about how it particularly could benefit you maybe in the future, we'd be happy to do so.
From my side, just thank you very much for joining us.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time, Adam. I appreciate your time, Nico. Thank you both so much for sharing your experiences and telling us more about how you've used Agile methodologies and how they can actually work within a project in your organizations. If anybody here that is in attendance would like to learn more about how we can help improve your process and implement this approach in your organization or project, we would love to talk with you one-on-one. Keep an eye out for a follow-up email after this webinar with our contact information, and we can coordinate a convenient time for you or anybody else you would like to invite along for a conversation. So thank you once again, everybody, for your time. We'll be posting this to our YouTube channel. You can watch it again later or share it with somebody else you think might find some value in this. Feel free to let us know in the comment section about how we can cover any future topics that you might be interested in. Thank you all once again and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, guys.